هيا على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال الله تعالى: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. وقال الله تعالى: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. الحمد لله. We begin with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful, the compassionate, the kind, the master of the day of judgment, the one who gives life, the one who gives death, and to him we shall return. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send his blessings, his salawat upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our messenger, our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and upon those that follow his path until the end of time. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah. Another Jum'ah always serves as a reminder for us to get back on track. Right? It's not just a news broadcast on what's going on within the Muslim world. It's also to realign ourselves with what we're doing here in this world. Right? And that's something that we always ask ourselves. You know, is there something beyond my 9 to 5? Is there something beyond my schooling, my career? Is there something beyond whatever I'm doing at this very moment, right? That's something that we think about every day. And to really just bring some points in as to, to realign ourselves, how we realign ourselves during the month of Ramadan, every Friday to Friday, every year. Something very interesting I've come across in terms of preparing for this khutbah was that exactly 1400 years ago, in Gregorian years, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he traveled over 300 miles in the desert, half on foot and half on camelback, on an abandoned path towards Medina to continue propagating the message of Islam. Right? We think 1400 years before, and we think about 300 miles, you could say it's going from like Los Angeles to somewhere in between Grand Canyon and Las Vegas. And we think on foot, on camelback. Right? That's something that's really interesting, yeah? And so we see today, 1400 years later, ourselves, and we thank Allah that we're still in the state of truly submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we struggle. Because as Muslims being here in the Americas, in the West, there's a lot of things that are happening. Right? As of recent, there's been something going on with the Hajj. Because the Hajjah is coming as the next month in the holy calendar. And, cutting off the middle agent so that Saudi will deal with us directly. There's some pros and cons. Right? And at the end of the day, walillahi alhamd, we have to deal with that as how life is. That's how life is. Up and down. I'm reminded about Hajj and the struggles of Hajj, and for those that haven't gone for Hajj, as I haven't as well, and we read about it. The stories of Hajj, the stories of Umrah, the stories of going, and the struggle and everything. We ask Allah so that we can all make Hajj once in our lifetime, inshallah. There's a specific story that I really like to review in terms of our legacy as being Muslims in America. The idea of Muslim Americana, what defines us in our creating of the identity of being Muslim in America. It's and I'll read from this passage. It's the letter from Mecca, which is the letter from Malcolm X, Allah have mercy on him. He writes from Mecca and how his perceptions and insights change from being forefront against, quote unquote, the white devils, towards seeing the idea of what he'll say later on, inshallah. I'll read that through. Yes, I wrote a letter from Mecca. You're asking me, didn't you say that now you accept white men as brothers? Well, my answer is that in the Muslim world, I saw, I felt, and I wrote home how my thinking was broadened. Just as I wrote, I shared true brotherly love with many white-complexioned Muslims who never gave a single thought to the race or to the complexion of another Muslim. Remember what was happening in the 60s and the 70s of racial tension, and we see today, right, of what's going on towards the systemic issues that are going on within this country, within the systems that we see. My pilgrimage broadened my scope. It blessed me with a new insight. In 2 weeks in the Holy Land, I saw what I never had seen in 39 years here in America. I saw all races, all colors, blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, in true brotherhood, in unity, living as one, worshiping as one. No segregationists, no liberals. They would not have known how to interpret the meaning of those words. This reminds me, and it reminds us of what we're here doing at this very moment, at this Jum'at. We're all praying together, of different backgrounds. Many of us may come from K-Town, many of us are visitors as well. We're all in this together, right? And what brings us here is our lovingly submission to the real, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the realignment that we're looking for in our daily lives day to day. Right? One thing that I can take away from here, from reading this, is that the ayah that I just mentioned, usually you have ayahs and khutbahs that you have to recite as an obligation towards the prereqs of a khutbah. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih. O Allah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, all those that believe, ittaqullah, have mindfulness, have taqwa, have God consciousness. Haqqa tuqatih. Mindfulness to the extent that you're putting what Allah is owed of. Right? We say that in the Shahada, the first pillar of Islam, we declare, we testify, we bear witness, La ilaha illallah. Right? We say that every single day. In true meaning, La ilaha, we declare and we bear. When you think about someone witnessing something, this masjid, interesting. During Fajr, we have Fajr over here as well. We were praying Fajr. I said Allahu Akbar and everything. One of the attendees, they came late, and then something was going down. Someone left their bike outside near the fence, and there was, unfortunately, a happy-go-lucky type of person during Fajr prayer. He was trying to, he jumped, and you see the cameras and whatnot. He jumped inside the fence, and he went inside the masjid compound, and then, he was about to do his thing, right? Take the bike and everything. One of the late comers to the prayer, he saw that, he witnessed it, right? Because if there was no one there, no one would have witnessed it, right? The idea of eyewitness, and we wouldn't have known unless the cameras saw it, right? But the thing is, we gotta work with the cameras, inshallah. The idea is that we witness this. We see this as something that is very real. We see that there's nothing other than God, right? We see that there is no gods, lowercase g, s. No gods except God, with a capital G. That's the reality that we're witnessing. And that's what we're struggling to reach. Right? That's the reality that Malcolm X was trying to attain for the truth and objective truth. Because postmodernity tries to tackle the idea of that everything is subjective. There's no certainty. But one thing that's certain for sure, to tie things around, inshallah, to have pure, full sincerity of your consciousness towards God. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ, and do not ever die. Do not go out. Do not go 6 feet under. إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ, except that you die in a state of lovingly submission. Muslims. Submitting to the one, with a capital. And why I'm saying capital is that this is a certainty that we ascribe to as Muslims, as believers. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, for those that were born Muslim, why am I Muslim in the first place? That's something we have to think. Some of us are born Muslim, but we don't really get to the idea of consciousness, of really realizing why I'm Muslim in the first place. Is it because I was born Muslim, my parents are Muslim, that's the end of it? Or was there a certainty? Because the Sahaba at that time, they saw a certainty through the Prophet ﷺ. This is real. Right? Something else that's certain is death. That's also a subtopic that I was trying to hit, inshallah ta'ala. Just Wednesday, I went on a spontaneous road trip to Death Valley. Interesting. Don't let that off your radar, Death Valley, if you're going to Yosemite, for those that are super outdooring Muslims out here. Grand Canyon, Death Valley, you realign yourselves and see, nature. That's what we need, as city Muslims over in Cape Town. You gotta get out. You gotta get out. The idea of, and a couple weeks before we went camping as well, there's this idea of escaping the city life, escapism, or whatever you want to call it, retreats. Right? The idea of camps is to retreat from the city life, from the hubbub of the 9 to 5 and things that are going on and whatnot. So I really recommend everyone to do that. The idea is that, if it's called a retreat, what are we retreating from? What are we escaping from? It's a question that I ask myself, and hopefully we all ask ourselves, what are we escaping from? The Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, he had his own retreat. He went to the Jabal Nur, the mountain of light, into the cave of Hira, where he would go away from the hubbub of the Quraysh, the people at that time. Too much to deal with, Society is like, let me take a break. Let me take a break. Let me meditate. Let me connect. Let me try to find that truth, capital T. Because as Muslims, as we submit, we're continually submitting. We're continually looking for truth. We're continually learning. Right? The same thing goes with Ashab al-Kahf, or as what I like to call in Surah al-Kahf, as what we always recite for Sunnah, or as a recommended prophetic tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, to read Surah al-Kahf, the surah of the cave, the kids of the cave. What did they do as well? They retreated. One place to another. They retreated. Why was the retreat there? Why did they do that? They needed to get away from what was going on in society. Not to say everything is bad and it's like all going down in flames and whatnot, but the idea is that we need to disconnect to reconnect. I'll say that once again. We have to disconnect to reconnect. This ties in with the idea of prayer. Salah, I was in Egypt. Their phone lines, we have like T-Mobile over here, AT&T, Verizon. They have their phone company called Ittisalat. Salah, Ittisalat, connection. Salah is the connection. Right? And it's not just in prayer. It's the everyday that we do, that we're trying to connect to Allah. And with this Jum'at, we strive to connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? We want to share that with ourselves and our communities and see, how am I realigning myself? And we're doing this intentionally. That's the question. Am I doing this just because, there's a Jum'ah, there's prayer here? Out of the day of 24 hours, 7 days a week, am I intentionally trying to remember God in my life? Am I intentionally trying to disconnect from what is out here and to connect what is really there? And that has always been there. Because Allah is closer to us than the jugular vein. It's not about Allah being far from us, because Allah is already there. Who has moved? Is it Allah who has moved? Or is it us that has moved? So we think about those things, about the retreat. Right? There's an ayah in the Quran. يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. The question again I ask, what are we retreating from? There are those that retreat, and that's a day that will happen. مَالِكِ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ, the day of recompense. Master of the day of recompense, or the day of judgment. That day, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ, a day when a brother will run away from that other brother. If you have siblings, you think you're so tight-knit, you're close, you dap each other and so forth, you don't want to do anything with your bro, right? Or your sister. يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. And you want to run away from your parents as well, or your parents will run away from you. The idea is that those that truly love you in this world, be tested in the sense that we're all dealing with this on our own at the end of the day. It will be a day we're all retreating from that day. We don't want to get towards that day. We want to run away. We want to retreat. We want to flee. وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ, the spouse and the child. Right? They will run away from each other as well. Our connection with our relationships with our spouses, our connection with our relationships with our offspring, we hold them dearly to our lives, but then we run away from them. I don't want to deal with you. Think about our children, think about our siblings, think about our parents, how we deal with what our relationships are with them. We say, I love you, and so forth. Our love languages. At that day, we'll be running away from them. I don't want to deal with you. But then the flip side, and I'll end it here for this first half, is we're escaping from something, from that inevitable day. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. But then God tells us, flee, escape again, retreat again. Ilallah, to God, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's that juxtaposition that you see in the Quran right here. We're fleeing from people from that day, but we're fleeing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because at the end of the day, we have the mantra, we have the phrase, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It's not for just the dead person. But there's a saying related from Angel Jibreel towards Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aish, live. Ma shi't, live. However you choose. فَإِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ. But know that indeed you are truly a dead man walking, in my own words. There's an old movie, Green Mile, dead man walking. Dead man walking. The idea is that, society today portrays a certain picture upon death as though it's very tabooish. But the idea for the Muslims is that we live to our full extent, that we are knowing that it's certain. And because we know it's certain, we get our priorities straightened out. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to realize and accept death as what it is, and to allow us to prepare for it in a way that's befitting in meeting our Creator, the one that sustains us and the one that gives us life and death. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. أستغفر الله. الحمد لله وكفى الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد المصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم. Alhamdulillah. The idea of death and God consciousness is all over the Quran. Right? And death, there's a saying, may death do us apart for marriages and whatnot. But the idea for the one that truly knows God, that truly knows Allah, is that may death not do us apart, but may death bring us together. What do I mean by that? Because in death, the reality of death is that it's unveiling a veil towards the one that you truly love. And that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the idea that once we have not just the sights, but the insights of seeing who Allah truly is in our lives, and what this reality of life really is, we gotta take that red pill. Right? But that's what we're trying to aim for, right? That's what we're struggling towards. But we have these distractions in life. But the idea of distractions of this world is to really show that, we have to use these distractions as a way towards God, as a way towards our wayfaring towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This dunya, because there's many things about, this world, there's a prison for the believer, so on and so forth, don't want to live here, so long, it's a hotel, it's a pit stop, it's a gas station, we're not here forever, we know that. But there's something very beautiful, as one of the scholars in the Islamic tradition, they say that have the dunya, have this life, not in your heart, but in your hands, under your feet. And have the akhirah, have the hereafter, have Allah, metaphysically speaking, have Allah within our hearts. Have the dunya, have the world within your grasp. Do whatever you can to do and to make your moves and maneuver around this world. But also realize that we're going back to Allah. And so have that within our hearts, inshallah. And so, just to answer that question, how do we flee to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do we flee and escape? That question of retreat. There's 5 ways in the tafsir of Ibn Ajiba. I really recommend it. There's a translation from the publication France Vitae. Ibn Ajiba, he says 5 ways of retreating to Allah. Because we think about surrender, right? I give up. And truly surrendering to the real is not surrendering in the reality of things that we're just, that's Allah. That's Allah. That's something that we have to realize. And once we know who truly Allah is, there's steps towards knowledge, or steps towards understanding. 5 ways of retreating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from the denial of that we've been given life towards faith, realizing who gave us life in the first place. Right? From kufr to iman. Because kufr itself, some say in the English, kufr, to cover up something. Because the Quraysh at that time, in the Prophet ﷺ's time, they knew the truth, but they covered it up. Right? Maybe someone around us in our communities, in our societies, they have a distorted image and understanding of Islam. Right? So, we really need to work on how we present ourselves as mercy upon mankind. Mercy upon all of creation, as how the Prophet was sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number 2 is from vice to virtue, from doing bad things to good things. If you have bad habits, check yourself before you wreck yourself, clean your own house, and change that into habits that you can do, that are positive, that are benefiting, that are working towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 3, from heedlessness to wokeness, is what I call it, to awareness, remembrance. The idea of remembering dhikr. Because if we're not remembering, we're forgetting. There's no shade in between. It's either or. If we're not remembering of God, of reality through the things that we're dealing with, we're in a state of a coma, a state of sleep paralysis. We need to wake up and realize that the real is there. We need to remember. From stagnancy, complacency, to disattachment. Meaning that, things are going okay, so on and so forth. We want to do better. But we don't want to be attached with things. You don't want to get obsessive. For example, we can enjoy the things in life, foodies, hang out with people and whatnot, but the idea is that we're always coming back to that unifying thing, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Remember the mantra, remember the slogan, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Not just for dead people, it's for living people as well, for us as well. And last but not least, it's from the idea that we're retreating from just our own sights, as I said, towards the insight. That we see meaning, that we see between the lines. There's a silver lining in this life that I'm living. Right? And so the idea at the end of the day is that wherever we retreat, wherever we are in this life, that retreat doesn't have to be physical. It can be a retreat from the ways that we do, towards something that is more prophetic, something that is more godly, towards who we can truly become towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and towards following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in realizing our retreats that we have, in our own specific retreats to our Jabal Nurs, we ask Allah so that we can retreat not to other things of value, but we retreat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is of value. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that He accepts our intentions and our forgiveness. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, to have mercy upon us, to allow us to retreat to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a lovingly, submittingly manner. We ask Allah so that we can get to know who Allah truly is. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so we can get the ability, at least in our once in our lifetime, to make Hajj, or to visit holy shrines, or the Holy Kaaba, or to allow us to have that sense, as how Malcolm X, as how the Prophet ﷺ, as how the people of Hajj went through. We have that sense of going through that Hajj in ourselves in our daily lives, inshaAllah ta'ala. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
بسم الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. استقيموا واعدلوا. Straight in the lines of Allah. إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين. Indeed, our prayers, our sacrifices, our lives, and the end of our lives are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. استحضروا عظمات الله في قلوبكم. Have the presence of Allah within your hearts, inshaAllah. أثابكم. May Allah accept our prayers. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
الله
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Inshallah, there's a dua request for a sister. She passed away in Indonesia. I want to make dua for her. It's Ibu Haji Kencana Laksmi Rudiani Kusmadawi binti Haji Ahmad Arif Lubis passed away this Jum'at today. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So we'll make dua for her and for everyone, inshallah. Astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim, astaghfirullah al-azim. اللهم اغفر لها وارحمها وعافنا واعف عنها. اللهم لا تحرمنا اجرها ولا تفتنا بعدها فاغفر لنا ولها ولجميع المسلمين والمسلمات الاحياء والاموات انك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا قاضي الحاجات. اللهم انا نسالك مما سالك به محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعبادك الصالحون ونعوذ بك مما تعوذ منه محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعبادك الصالحون. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم. ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. رب الناس أذهب البأس اشفي أنت الشافي لا شفاء إلا شفاءك شفاء لا يغادر سقما. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us, to forgive our parents, to forgive our forefathers and our foremothers. We ask Allah to forgive our communities. We ask Allah to forgive our transgressions that we do towards you, Ya Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon us, to have mercy upon our families and our communities. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to know and understand you more, Ya Allah. We ask Allah so that we can love you, Ya Allah, and so we can love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make things of ease and not of hardship, Ya Rabbal Alameen. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. We ask Allah for the best of this world and in the hereafter. We seek Allah's protection from the hellfire, and we seek Allah's pleasure in the Jannah al-Firdaus al-A'la. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين